Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Andy and Mitch. Two sisters, two generations, unique perspectives, and always a little nonsense.
Today, we're getting into a topic that's tender and maybe a little too real: friendship. Not just the fun parts, we're talking friendship in your 30s and 40s.
From what makes a great friend to how friendships evolve to the heartbreak of friendship breakups and the joy and awkwardness of making new friends as an adult. We've got stories, laughs, and some hard truths to share.
Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode about friendship. I think we talk about this topic in secret a lot because as adults, we feel maybe a little embarrassed. We feel like we should have it all figured out. But in reality, we know not only from experience, but even doing a little deep dive into some of the research, adult friendships are hard. And defining like great friendships and how do you create new friendships and how do we let go of old ones? I mean, it's a whole journey.
It's true. A great friendship is kind of like a plant. You don't always notice it's growing, but it thrives when it's nourished consistently with a lot of care.
But growing up, when we start as children, friendships are simple. It's easy. It's like we both like rainbow unicorns. Cool, let's hang out.
Now that you say that, I actually heard this thing. They gave an adult a compliment and they said, if we were in kindergarten, I'd want to put my jacket next to yours.
Mm,
And I thought that's just such a sweet sentiment.
yeah. It's so fascinating that we are in an era of having access to so much technology that's supposed to bring people closer together. And yet, we're also at the same time in an era that is being defined as a loneliness epidemic where adults are really feeling disconnected in ways that they never did before. And when adults are asked what maybe is missing in their life, it tends to be friendships.
And community for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, friendships and community. And the research that Mitch and I were looking at talks a lot about this. I was a little blown away by this fact that friendships often peak at the age of 21 and they begin to decline by the time you're 31, if not sooner.
Wow.
And for some reason in my head, I thought that feels really young. But as I'm thinking about it as it relates to my own experience, I guess it's pretty accurate.
As you get older and you start to define what friendship is, you start to understand the key elements that actually make a good friend. You start to see those numbers dwindle. So let's go over that. Friendship is a close and trusting relationship between two or more people who genuinely care for each other, enjoying spending time together, and offer mutual support, understanding, and respect. It's
Yeah.
not just about being there in the good times. It's also about sticking around through the tough stuff, offering honesty, kindness, and loyalty. And there's a few key elements that usually can help you define what a true friendship is supposed to look like. So it's someone that offers mutual affection and respect, emotional support, trust and honesty, shared values and interests, and they have a willingness to invest time and effort into you, your friendship.
It's interesting also that because we're in the US, that can look differently in other countries. Although, from what I've read, this idea of this loneliness epidemic is global. Like people are feeling it across the world. And there are some countries that are doing interesting things to try to mitigate that. But in the US, the number of adults that report having zero close friends has quadrupled. Quadrupled.
Something is to be said about the fact that a significant amount of those adults are millennials. Millennials born between 1981 and 1996, 30% of them reported having no best friend, and 22% had no friends at all. We got to just take a pause there real quick, guys. What the heck is going on?
What
Because
is
if
going on?
I think when we look at these trends, a lot of times we have to look at the next generation and what they're going to inherit.
Technology has plays such a big role in all of this. So millennials, you all are like that generation that really did the deep dive into technology becoming a part of daily living. And also as a Gen Xer, we were like the forgotten generation. And so we were okay being alone. I would love to see more data on like how Gen Xers are experiencing this because for example, pandemic happened and me and majority of my Gen X friends, we adapted really well into being isolated during the pandemic. and then moving out of it because it was a big part of how we grew up anyways. Yeah, we're a
It's
very independent generation. What does my daughter call us? We're like that rogue feral generation.
but you guys also statistically have better friendship rates.
I will say, and we've talked about this in past episodes, as Gen Xers, we know how to connect with people outside of technology.
You guys have a different quality of friendship. Like millennials maybe lack that because of the introduction of technology taking a pretty significant role from their teens into their late adulthoods.
Mhm.
I'm fortunate to have been on the cusp of that, but some of the research pertains to my own lived experience.
Yeah, I'm very
Mhm.
fascinated by this topic of loneliness and I realize a lot of that is because of my generational perspective is a little different, but also watching how it impacts younger generations as a parent and having a teenager experiencing life and how loneliness is really having a huge negative impact on our younger generations. And these are the people that are going to take over the world at some point,
Yeah.
and it's having a major effect on their ability to create community and find authentic, real connections with people. Where I think as adults and women in our 30s and 40s, we have the skills to do it.
That's funny. That's a great observation.
Back in my day, we had party lines. A party line was basically like a giant conference call, and people would go on there and talk about where the hangouts were going to be, where the happening things were, and then you go eventually to one of these events.
Yeah.
But people would talk to each other that way.
Well, a lot of the stuff in my 20s that was considered like the cool stuff to do is like,
Crazy.
how did I not die?
I think the point is we were doing things out in the world together. And this
Yeah.
is how also you made more friends, right? But you had to be out and about. You couldn't do that from your phone or your computer.
It's because you're in community with a bunch of other kids.
Mm.
So you're able to look for that likeness and associate it with an enjoyable time. And that never changes. The thing is that socially, our construct changes as we get older and the expectations change as we get older. And we just have to learn how to navigate that better.
We're going to get into that. But what would you say are some green flags in relationships that you've learned to appreciate now with age that maybe you didn't appreciate before when you were younger? We define friendships differently as we age. People have to meet a lot more criteria for them to be, and this sounds horrible, but for them to be worthy of a piece of our time, because we have so many things that we're doing in life nowadays that to cultivate a real friendship, you need to have time and energy for it. So, what do you think some are your personal green flags in friendships that you appreciate now with age? I think a green flag for me is when it feels easy, like when I can just get coffee and go to Home Goods with a friend, or we can show up to an early dinner before it gets crowded and just like low key have a good time. When that feels easy, that's a green flag for me. If I have to feel like I have to prepare myself to be in space with you, that's like a red flag for me. I don't know if that's like a friendship over an acquaintance, because that's a lot of energy.
Yeah, that's definitely transactional. When you find yourself in spaces where you have to like prep yourself, like if you're going in to play a football game,
Like it's
something's
a whole,
wrong.
if I feel like
Yeah.
I have to put on a prom dress to hang out with you, we're probably not friends.
I think people who celebrate you, who celebrate your wins, who celebrate that you were born,
Yes.
that they're just stoked that you exist in their lives. And so they want to take little moments. And then it doesn't have to be like these big, elaborate celebrations, but even just to celebrate you with words, right? Like encouragement and joy and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big green flag.
That's a huge marker for friendship as adults, too.
Yeah.
I think another big green flag is someone who can be really goofy and stupid with you.
That's like the
That's like
best.
major green flag. That's like fireworks, because sometimes in adulthood, we take ourselves too seriously. And if you can sing My Endless Love with me through Kohl's while we're shopping for socks for our children, then you're like ride or die OG. Like we're going to be besties forever.
Maybe, or they're crazy, one or the other. A green flag for me, which is not always going to be a green flag for everybody, but people who can call me on my shit and do it respectfully without making me feel horrible.
With love.
with love. They meet me in the moment and they're like, I don't think so, dude. I think you are seeing things wrong.
Is there anything that you used to think made a good friend that you feel like now you've outgrown that or you don't see that as a good green friendship flag?
I used to think that people who were always available were great friends. You know, you have a great friend when you have to cancel something, and they might be a little bit bothered if it's like last minute, but they never take it as like a personal thing as long as you follow through the next time.
And secretly, when one of us cancels, we know the other one is celebrating because we'd rather be home.
Yes. The best friendships where you're like, hey, do you have the capacity to chill? And if they're like, no, you're like, great, because actually I want to go get some Thai food and be left the hell alone.
When I was young, that having a friend that was all up in your mix all the time was a good thing because that it was like, oh, yeah, they really care about me because they're all up in my business. When in reality, that's very toxic.
Yeah. Doesn't always play out the way you think.
No.
Do you think you're a better friend now than you were 10 years ago?
Yes, 10 years ago for sure. Yeah, if you could see my face, mortified. Definitely. I was in a hard place 10 years ago. I had a young child. I was dealing with a lot of illness. So I didn't have the capacity to be a good friend. I rationalized that for myself, knowing that I couldn't be a good friend or I wasn't being a good friend to people, instead of allowing myself to be tended to by my friendships, bringing my friends into what was I was going through. I kind of pushed people out. Today, I have a better capacity to show up for others as a friend, although I am much more particular about where I'm putting my time and energy and who I'm spending it with. There are a handful of people that I really value and love and enjoy spending time with. So whenever I can, because I don't have a ton of extra time, I want to reach out and I want to see them and catch up with them and spend time with them.
Cool.
What about you?
10 years ago, I was always down to go on the adventure, go on the road trip. I would bring the energy if the energy was lacking. I always tried to make people feel really comfortable. In doing that, a lot of times I found myself in situations where I was betraying myself and I wasn't a good friend to myself. So I think I am a better friend to myself. And because of it, I am a good friend to the people that I consider good friends. That has opened my eyes and it's changed my understanding of what some relationships were. And I've redefined them, you know?
I think you're really speaking to this idea of how friendships evolve as we evolve over time, right? And what we prioritize in friendships and need from friendships and can give to friendship changes. As you shift in life, career, relationships, work, moving, where you live, your interests, your lifestyle, all of that shifts. And with that, your friendships change too.
It's true. And sometimes you blink and realize you haven't talked to someone in 6 months. And it's not because you don't love them, it's just life is lifing hard.
Life be lifing. Do you ever feel low key rejected when a friend becomes super close with someone new? Who is this new character in your life and why are you hiking every weekend without me?
There was times in my late 20s and maybe even in my early 30s, I would feel like, what the hell? Like we used to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would feel that and then I would realize I'm actually happy for them. It's the interaction that I'm missing in my own life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily reflect the friendship, but I could see how that could happen. I mean, for anybody at any point.
Yeah. I've had that happen with different friendships for different reasons, maybe the new relationships or parenthood. Sometimes people get into relationships, and this can be at any age. And now all you want to do is spend your time with that person. I know that we've both experienced that, but also having friends of our own who also have new relationships. And of course, they want to spend time and they really want to deep dive into exploring this new life with this person. It does change the dynamics a little bit because now what maybe once was like your ride or die bestie and you guys did everything together now is no longer available or prioritized in your life.
It becomes pretty eye-opening when you're on the receiving end of that. But then on the flip side, as somebody who's also been in that scenario, adding a partner always complicates things.
Yeah, it does.
Especially if you really like them.
I definitely have friendships with people that I've had for a very long time where it kind of ebbs and flows, where we've separated for a while just because life is happening and we've come back together. We
Mhm.
separate, we come back together. But every time we come back together, it really doesn't feel like it's been years in my case. And I don't know if this is true in your case. Some of these are some of my oldest friendships,
Yeah.
right? So these people know things about me that nobody else knows.
Nobody.
So technically, we're under contract and we cannot ever not be friends because we have to keep each other's secrets forever.
One of my long time, I want to say we've been friends for like over 25 years, but I don't see him very often. So when I do see him and we do catch up, it's like nothing ever changed. We've changed enormously, but
Yeah.
we fit each other so well as friends. And so we just have this very natural, fun dynamic with each other. And we have so much love and respect for one another.
Beautiful. Like when you can have that. I think about those friendships and I wonder like can those friendships be recreated today? And I don't know if they can.
I don't know. I think it depends on us as people and how open we are to the people that exist that are willing to be that deep. I'm not sure, but I'll report back.
Let me ask you this. Since we're talking about like friendships and phases of friendships and the ebbs and flows of them, how do you know when there's a shift in a friendship that is just lifing versus a real disconnect? Like now I feel like this friendship is going to come to an end. How do you know that?
When people intentionally prioritize something over your friendship, especially if you're making time to
Mm.
really schedule things, I think that's when you have a pretty good indicator that there's a drift over a shift. As I would think you would be able to do with a real friend, you should be able to talk to them about how you're feeling and you should be able to address whatever is making you feel that way.
Mhm.
If they still intentionally make decisions to disregard how you feel, that's when you know that you're drifting. As where a shift, it might be a little bit wonky, but when you address it, they're going to share some kind of information that maybe you were not privy to. They're going to disclose some kind of experience that they're currently in. And normally that will give you some insight into why the shift exists. And then you can choose to talk through it with them,
Mm.
maybe hold space, offer support. What do you think?
When a friendship feels one-sided. So you can be on either side of that coin, right? I mean, I've had friendships end with people that I really valued our friendship and I had hoped that we would have long-term friendships and watch our
Mhm.
children grow up together and all the things. But there was just a very clear feeling of being in their presence that it was one-sided. And you touched on this earlier, right? When you're maybe having conversations and they are not rooting for you, but in fact, maybe being negative about what you're working on or what you're working towards. They don't show up for you. They don't want to hear anything about what's going on in your life. They only want to trauma dump everything that's going on in their life. And there's no reciprocity in the
Mhm.
relationship. For me, that's a clear sign. This is a one sided friendship and it's probably ending fairly soon.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, deep breath, y'all. We've all had our heart broken by friends.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about romantic relationships, but we have so many different kinds of relationships. And I do feel like sometimes friendships can really have such an impact when you have a friendship breakup. Ghosting. I hear this a lot from people.
Of friends?
Someone you thought was a good friend of yours, and then all of a sudden they just ghost and they
Ew.
like don't respond. They don't invite you over to events
Oh
anymore.
my god, have I ghosted somebody?
If you haven't been ghosted, then you are
I'm the
probably the
one doing
ghoster.
the ghost. I'm the ghost.
Admittedly, I don't know. Maybe I have ghosted when I was younger. I have had friendships that have ghosted where, like, all of a sudden, I don't hear from this person anymore. Of course, we go through the did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Is there a reason? And then once you're like, actually, no, there isn't. For whatever reason, this friendship has ended in this moment and you just let it go. There's one in particular that I'm thinking about as I'm talking about this is I was like, well, maybe we really weren't that close of friends to begin with.
Yep,
Maybe I thought the friendship was stronger than it actually was.
I know that very well. You know what's interesting is like when I was younger, maybe I was the ghoster to be real frank. When I was younger, I moved a few times and that changed how I interacted with friends Because when you move and you're young, you have to really adapt because you're going into like these unknown circumstances and you have to create friends and community and all that stuff. So as I got older, it became really normalized to kind of friendship hop. And even in high school, I wasn't cool. I kind of just got along with everybody. I think my dynamic was different in that sense. I remember making my first real female friend. That friendship ending really hurt.
But did you see it coming?
I didn't see it coming. It was when our father
Mhm.
had passed away and I kind of lost sight of myself for a quick second
Yeah.
and made a lot of interesting choices. And then she just bailed.
Mm.
But when she bailed in a really spectacular way, which we won't get into the details. I was pretty heartbroken over that.
Yeah.
I think I felt more betrayed than heartbroken. But like 2 years after that, she asked me to have dinner. We had dinner. We talked about it. I still don't forgive her, but she follows me on Instagram. So, hey, you know,
Well, there you go. You're still friends.
no, I don't follow her at all. She still follows me though.
Which
Yeah.
is why, like, if a friendship is ending or has ended, even if it's abrupt, it's good to think about, like, was this really a good friendship for me to be in now? Or were they really even that good of a friend to begin with?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Also to note, when you go through the seasons of life and you see your surroundings and your people change, you can become a little bit jaded. So then your friendship dynamics shift and you start to kind of close off and maybe not allow people in so close
Well, especially if
when they
you've been
leave.
burned.
I've been burned.
Do you think are there certain ones that maybe have ended or friendships that ghosted that you would be open to being friends with again today?
No, it made sense why it ended.
Mhm.
It's not comfortable when it's happening. You question a lot of things.
Mhm.
Once you can look back on it in retrospect, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then when you look back on it with that perspective, you can kind of like look at it fondly,
Mhm.
celebrate the time that you guys were friends and all the really cool things you learned and had fun and all the crazy stories.
What about like in cases where you're the one that's like pulling away from a friendship? How do you navigate like the guilt of letting go, especially if it's been a longtime friend?
Yeah. You know, that really depends on the dynamic of the friendship. There was
Mhm.
one particular friendship that I adored this person, but they became heavily involved in the use of drugs,
Mhm.
and that was just not healthy for me to be
Mhm.
around, and I had to part ways.
Mhm.
I loved them so much, and it really hurt to
Mhm.
watch them go down that path. That's when sometimes you have some guilt or some pain around it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I've been definitely deeply heartbroken by friendships, especially by people who I would consider to be like almost like a soul sister, and to feel like things were not being reciprocated. I wasn't feeling supported. We were going down different paths. And I remember getting to the point where I was like, I have to make a decision whether I'm going to continue in this friendship and continue to push through and deal with all the crap, or I need to walk away because it was weighing so heavily on me that it was toxic. But I did feel guilty for a long time because I thought maybe I didn't try hard enough, or you don't really throw away friendships or deep connections like that. I carried around a lot of guilt, and it took me a lot of my own personal healing to let it go and just accept that they are not meant to be in this next version of my life with me. And they are not capable of
Yeah.
meeting me where I need them to meet me in order for this to be considered a healthy, good friendship.
Yeah.
I carried a lot of that burden, which is also probably part of the we got to hold it together. I'm also the oldest daughter and all that crap that we learn as we grow up.
That explains why I'm the ghost. 'Cause I'm the youngest.
You're the ghoster for sure.
I'm pretty much not around. Like, did you call me? I only arrive when you actually summon me. Thanks.
It's like a genie in a bottle. Wait, are we still friends?
Surprise! I rearranged your living room.
And I also do think we have to let go of certain friendships and relationships because we only have so much capacity. Like I joke a lot and I say, I'm not currently hiring for friends. I don't have any open positions
Yeah.
because I only have a limited number of positions for friendships based on my crazy life. But when we can let go of those things that don't serve us, that are toxic, that just aren't working anymore, then we can open up space for opportunities to make new friends as
Yeah.
adults, which is not easy and very humbling when you're trying to make friends as adults.
And we can talk about how exhausting it is to start from scratch. Like, hi, I'm weird and emotionally available. Want to hang out once a month?
Yeah, I have 45 minutes every other week. Do you want to hang?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's hard. When we're young, we're just in close proximity with these other humans on a regular basis. So it's much easier cuz our lives are running parallel. But as we grow up and become adults, it's hard to find moments where we can connect. Even just to have a conversation that's outside of texting.
When you're older, it's got to be someone that can run like errands with you.
No, it's like, hey, I'm gonna run to Trader Joe's because they just dropped their new market bag. Do you want to come with? And that's your friendship date.
And if they say, oh my God, I was actually just on their website and I saw that they have body butter that I want to try, that's a friendship.
Yes. I was watching a clip with Michelle Obama. I love her. And she's just so wise and so classy. But I really appreciate the vulnerable honesty that she brings to things that she talks about.
Yeah.
And she was talking about friendships, and she was saying how her close friends now, it's a much smaller circle, that because they're living busy lives all over the world, potentially, they have to make intentional friendship dates that has to be a whole weekend. So they plan, like, you're going to come to my house and you're going to stay the night because you're going to go, we're going to talk all about you. And then we're going to talk all about me. And then we're going to talk about all the things we want to do together and maybe do one fun thing while you're here. I loved that it was almost like adult sleepovers.
I've had those. Those are fun, but they're rare. And with that, if you're trying to make friends, unless you're like a crazy extrovert that just like can talk to a wall, then you can make a friend wherever you go. Another cool way is like joining a fitness club or joining a fitness what is it called?
This is where people go to exercise and they have classes and groups and things, you know?
Yeah, maybe exercise groups, improv groups, book clubs, knitting clubs, bird watching clubs.
Get outside the house.
Yeah.
That's my motto. But that's also generational. Harder for some people that are not from my generation.
That's your motto and that's your generation. Just go outside and talk to people. Just like you said, you also have to be intentional about showing up, making space, participating in the activity to even engage with people you don't know.
Yeah.
Because I remember one time, not that this only happened once, but there was this one party that I went to, strutting. And with my friend Monica at the time, I can say her name because we're not friends anymore.
There are 100 different million Monicas.
Yeah, there's billions of Monicas. She took me one time. She was like, I want to go to this party. I really think this guy's cute, blah, 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 blah. I said, sure, I'll go with you. She's like, be my wing woman. I've never done this in my life. I'm really uncomfortable about this, but I'll go. And so then I went, and then when we got out of the car, I gave myself a pep talk before I got up to the party. And I said, you're going to blow them all away. You're interesting. You got this. I got up to that party, and I was the fucking coolest person I've ever met. I was just so confident in myself and so excited to be there. Just a great time. And it was a wonderful experience. And then when we were leaving, two of the guys there were like really trying to get my number. And they kept telling me all the things of like how their signs were so compatible with mine. I was like, I gotta
that's
go.
too cheesy.
I gotta go. I gotta get out of here.
That's super cheesy.
What are we gonna do? Burn incense together? I don't think so.
No, this is not a love connection. Let's move on.
But yeah, be intentional about how you show up with people. Be intentional about how you address people, how you talk to them. The tonality is a big thing.
One thing that I've worked with people on is practice being a friend.
And practice body language.
This conversation comes up a lot in personal growth and development, is feeling lonely and wanting to create new friends. Feeling like I've been doing all this healing work and I'm really like so self-aware now, and now I don't have people that I can connect to, which is real. This happens all the time. But one of the things that I would teach people is like, learn how to be a friend. So practice with the people that you currently have around you now, because some of those friendships will be salvageable because they're going to see you and they're going to meet you where you are. It really is that old saying of like, you need to treat people how you want to be treated. But if I'm also not showing up as a good friend, then I can't expect to find new good friendships. You have to just practice talking to people, even if they're not the people you want to build the friendships with, especially if they're not the people you want to build the friendships with, because that's low stakes. You just need to practice. And I love what you said earlier, Mitch, is like also learn how to be a friend to yourself. What would be your dream friend date as a grown up?
Taking myself out to Thai food, going to watch a really cute indie movie, buying some unnecessary art, grabbing a cafecito, going to see a cool concert, or just listening to music in the park. When you are a friend to yourself, you enjoy being with yourself.
Have you ever taken yourself on a date?
Yeah, and talking to myself. I love it.
Talking to yourself is a sign of high intelligence, by the way. People to this day think I'm a psychopath because I will take myself out and go eat at a restaurant alone or go to a movie alone or do something because I'm just enjoying my own company. But that's so important because you need that self awareness.
I
It
don't
helps me be a better partner and friend to other people.
I don't think that it makes you seem psycho or crazy.
People have told me that.
If you're sitting in the back corner and you're staring at people real weird,
I mean,
well,
I am a
stopping it.
people watcher. I'm not intentionally doing that, but it's possible.
Oh man, I mean that's intense. When you're going out and you're just enjoying your own company and you're enjoying like having a good time, you're getting it right there.
Yeah.
And
Once you start doing that, everything starts to change and you actually start finding how easy it is to meet people.
there's something to that, which is when you can be alone with yourself and be happy, you'll know when you meet real friends. It'll be much more natural and you won't feel that weird anxiety that you have to perform.
Yeah. And that's true for relationships, right? That's like true advice for any kind of relationship, romantic, friendship, professional, otherwise. I want to tell you my dream friend date. I'm taking a page out of Michelle Obama's book. I love the idea of a weekend, but I want to glam it up and I want to go somewhere where there's tons of shopping, food, restaurants, wineries, a huge house with a big pool, and just like friend it up
That sounds really
big
nice.
time. Like that would be awesome. I'd love to do that for my friends. Don't worry, y'all. It'll happen. We'll
I
get
like
there.
that. That's very much your vibe. I mean, they shoot movies like that.
Yeah. Like
Because
movie
for a reason.
lifestyle where you just come back happy and
Real-
relaxed and just it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
All right. So let's talk about some low maintenance versus high maintenance friendships.
Ooh, friend dynamics. We've all had at least one friend who needs daily check-ins and the one you talk to once a year, but it still feels magical. With age, I have weeded out the ones that need more daily check-ins. Low maintenance friendships just means that you guys understand each other, you're respecting each other, and it works for you. You feel like emotionally secure in that friendship. So you don't need to be all up in someone's mix 24/7.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know what a high maintenance friendship looks like, a high maintenance friend is someone that needs constant validation. Every conversation tends to be centered about them. They can guilt trip you often. They expect immediate access to you, right? They blow up your phone. They send you a bunch of texts at midnight. They create drama or tension, constant miscommunications or overreactions. Even fun hangouts end with emotional exhaustion. And they can sometimes be emotionally volatile, right? And so one day they love you and the next they're cold and distant. And that's really hard to navigate. So that is what constitutes a high maintenance friend.
If you have to work hard to try to earn somebody's friendship, then that's a hard pass. I do believe that, especially with friendships, there is some level of ease that comes with it.
There should be. There's some high maintenance friendships that have a element of codependency. And some people actually like being in that situation. If you find yourself being in that boat and it works for you, then okay. That's your choice.
It's a hard pass. I can't maintain that over time. And so the quality won't be there. I'm all about high quality friendships.
Yeah.
If you need me all day, every day, and you want to tell me everything you ate for breakfast and all the drama that's going on at work 24/7, I can't. Like, I just don't have the capacity for that. That's why it's so important to find people that you can build friendships with in spaces that you wanna be in,
Yeah.
because then you're in close proximity and it's much easier to build those friendships, and you guys are kinda on the same page, right, in life because you have similar interests, and that becomes much more of a maintainable friendship versus something that can feel really overwhelming if it's high maintenance. What about building friendships at work? Unless you're an entrepreneur or you work solo. If you work for a company or work with people, majority of your life is spent with those people at work.
You can actually see your colleagues more than you see your own family. You know what's funny is I used to have a really firm belief that you should not be friends with your colleagues.
Really?
Yeah, I really did. And I remember I had this group of friends that we would all go get dinner and we'd watch films together. And we did this every week. And then we'd have tea and we'd people watch people in LA. And one of the conversations I had with one of those really good friends was he truly believed that he was going to find his soulmate at work.
No.
And he
Wow.
also believed that some of your best friends should be your work colleagues.
Mm.
And I adamantly said, "No, you're wrong." Every single time he brought it up.
I would have assumed you would have said that, yeah, 100% you love work friendships.
No, I can't stand well, like, okay, hang on. Hang on. I didn't put a premium on work friendships until they proved me wrong.
Like
Time
a very
ago.
clear boundary, and I'm assuming you prefer to compartmentalize.
Yeah, and it's because I have not always fit into specific spaces, and the jobs that I obtained that gave me a little bit more financial freedom required me to fit a box that I didn't necessarily associate with myself.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes I felt like I had to tone myself down to fit in these environments. The concept that I could potentially be friends with somebody when I'm not even fully capable of being myself just felt farce. Like it felt like a
Yeah.
lie, you know? My last job really taught me that some people wanted to be my friend and I was so resistant to it that it actually changed the dynamic of the work experience
Mhm.
for me and caused some issues here and there.
Mhm. 'Cause they felt you were being standoffish, trying to separate your work life and your personal life.
Yeah, because for a long time I thought that was the professional thing to do. But I was proven wrong by a handful of people that still remain in my life. We are the kind of friends that if we see each other over a course of months or years, we pick up like nothing ever changed.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think both can be true. I'm also not a huge believer in, like, all of your friendships come from work. Early on in my early years of my career, I did intentionally pull away from creating workplace friendships because what I was seeing was very toxic. And I thought, I don't want to be that kind of person. And I don't want to be that chismosa in the office who's just miserable all the time.
Nancy, you know who you are.
You know who
Just
you
kidding.
are. I saw a lot of that in my early years, and I learned from it. I'm really good at watching what other people do and going, "Yeah, I'm not gonna do that." I experienced it also, and then people turning on me because I didn't join. That was like, "What? We're not really friends." And I remember going to my friends that I've known, and I'm like, "Can you believe this shit happens?" And we were sharing life stories of work because we were all new in the workforce, and we started to realize, like, okay, wait a minute, we need to be really clear about how we're going to show up in these spaces and what kind of relationships we want to build with people in these spaces. And I really started to define for myself what it meant to be professional,
Yes.
because I don't think we have to be friends. I don't need to braid your hair. You don't need to braid mine. I do believe we have to be respectful and kind, and we should care about other people because it's important. And if you meet someone who is just that one magic weirdo that matches your weirdo-ness, then great. That could be the possibility for a beautiful friendship. And I'm always open to that, but I don't actively seek out building friendships at work. I have a very small number of people that I would consider friends today that I've met at work, and we stay connected, but we're not super close. Well, maybe one or two we're pretty close. And then a couple that are like a little more distant friendship. But I do think people conflate friendship with connections because you want to like build a network, right?
Yep, that checks out. That checks out.
And it's hard because you are spending a lot of time with these people. I've been very fortunate to work with some really lovely people, fun people, funny people, loving people, kind people, smart, brilliant people. And it makes work better when you
Yeah.
can build some authentic connections. It does not mean, in my opinion, that has to be a friendship that extends beyond the workplace.
I think for me, it's like a professionalism thing. I try not to get too involved with people at work. And it also depends on the value and the premium value that you put on your career. Then, yeah, friendships at work make a lot of sense because you're going to spend a lot of time
Yeah,
at
you're
work.
probably spending 80 plus hours a week working. People that I work with that I would consider friends or have worked with that I consider friends, it's because we spend time together outside of work.
Another friend that I made at work was the funnest friendship ever, but it was like a fast burn. We had
Mm,
so much fun together, but then our lives went separate
yeah.
directions. But again, every friendship has a season and a reason.
Workplace friendships probably end more commonly because you leave the workplace. When you leave the workplace and you no longer have that time, does that relationship exist outside of it? You just got to be smart and careful. All the same friendship rules apply. I think you had mentioned this earlier. You want to build friendships with people who are going to support you and lift you up, especially in the workplace. They're going to
Yes.
cheer for you, cheer for your wins and your goals and your accomplishments, and speak well of you in rooms that you are not in.
100%.
Yeah.
That goes for every type of friendship,
1000%.
but especially if you're going to be making friends at work. And this one's tender, but let's kind of dive into letting go of a friendship, even a good one, and how it can be an act of growth.
Sometimes we hang on to friendships out of nostalgia, guilt, obligation. But the truth of the matter is, not every friendship is meant to last forever. And we've talked about that. Sometimes you got to let them go, even if it's hard. The reality of it is that life is going to continue to move forward. And we're going to continue to have a lot of things that we are dedicating our time and our energy to. We need to make sure that the people that we're bringing into these circles are people that are going to support our continued growth and joy in life.
Yeah. We have to remember that sometimes when we outgrow friendships, that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a real or beautiful experience or friendship that you had at some point in your life. And oftentimes, friendships are like seasons, right? They serve a purpose. When we reflect on the friendships we've had, we can really grow and also learn a lot about ourselves, learn about the people we don't want to be. It can be a really good tool and motivator.
And if you're an adult and you're looking for friendships or you're open for friendships, I have one friendship position available. I don't know about you, but again, right? Be selective, but be open and be clear about what you're looking for in your friendships.
Yeah, and of course, like everything good in life, don't take it too seriously. Have a good time and always try to show up as yourself.
Whew, that was a big topic.
Yeah.
And honestly, it feels good to talk about this stuff out loud.
Friendship is one of the most sacred parts of our lives and also one of the least talked about when it comes to grief, change, and growth.
Whether you're reconnecting, releasing, or looking to make new connections, we hope this episode gave you something to think about and maybe even invited you to text a friend. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and tag us on IG with your favorite friendship takeaway or story.
And shout out to our friends who've seen us through every era, the good and the messy.
You know who you are. Bye.
Bye.